Organizations with a strong learning culture are 92% more likely to develop novel products and processes. They're 52% more productive, 17% more profitable than their peers, and their engagement and retention rates are 30 to 50% higher. Yet, according to a Harris poll, only 39% of workers said their current employer is helping them improve their current skills or gain new ones to do their job better. To me, that looks like the bottom line is the bottom line. It's all about getting work done, and you can't get work done without workers. Right now, more than ever, workers want to believe that their employers are invested in them, in their professional growth. And it's an important factor for staying engaged. Workers also want to feel that their employers are recognizing their individual needs and coaching them professionally much the way that they feel like flexible work takes into account their personal needs to get the job done and maintain work-life balance. So here's where this piece of our discussion comes in. Coaching obviously requires a targeted, individualized approach, but one that's fair to all workers. So to talk about trends and best practices, we've assembled this great group of panelists, and I'm going to turn to them now, ask that they introduce themselves and tell us about one coaching moment that particularly stands out. TeNita, why don't we start with you?
Great. Thank you, Lydia, for the great welcome, and hi, everybody. TeNita Ballard. I'm located in Los Angeles, California. I'm the diversity leader within our sales and marketing group and global diversity and inclusion. So when I think of coaching, I'll go back let's go back 7 to 8 years. My chief diversity officer, we were just merging from one corporation to another, and I was in awe by this woman. She was the highest paid African-American at AT&T. She was a chief diversity officer. Her name is Sid Marshall. I know that many of you guys have heard of her. She's a wonderful woman and a great leader. But what I admired about her, the first time I saw her, she walked in a room, she had a great presence. She made everyone feel like they were welcome. And within joining her team, one of the first panels, she was an executive in Dallas. She came to El Segundo and they put on a panel and she invited me to speak. And I was so nervous, and I was like, at that point, I was a business partner, so mid-level manager. She had me on the stage with C-suites, vice presidents, and I was so nervous, and I reached out to her and I was like, what do you want me to say? And she's like, you have it. I want you to discuss X, Y, and Z, present on this. And she walked me through it. But it was just to have someone at that level coach me and believe in me to give me that opportunity to speak. It was priceless. So it was wonderful.
That is an awesome story. I love that. Given the seat at the table and encouraged to speak. Doesn't really get much better than that. Thank you for sharing that. Jill, how about you go next?
Sure, and good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here. My name is Jill Carter. I'm the Director of Leadership and Organizational Development from Intermountain Healthcare. Our organization is about 60,000 caregivers large, and we cover from the Midwest west at the moment in terms of the United States. I'm located here in Salt Lake City today, and trying to think about a very impactful moment would be as a coach with a client. This was a fabulous opportunity for me. It was and this individual became a dear friend on top of the coaching experience, a woman who was a supervisor in really quality assurance in a branch off of Intermountain called Select Health. It was an insurance company. She was IT. She decided that she had a goal to become a MIT student. Wow. And she came to us from India. And so the moment that was so impactful for me was watching her grow into those shoes. Mm-hmm. And today she is a student at MIT getting her master's degree in leadership development. And to see just the confidence and the growth that she developed through the coaching process. And now I can't wait to see what she's going to do with all of that, because I know this is not the end. This is the beginning of a long career in leadership for her.
Oh, that is absolutely wonderful. So it's the opposite kind of story, is that you're watching someone else's journey and encouraging them along. That's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Mary, this is a hard act to follow. Let's see.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lydia. My name's Mary Vinette, and I am based out of France. I come to France from Los Angeles, where TeNita, where you are. And I am the global head of learning and development at Technicolor. We're a Paris-based company, but we have global operations. I am also a certified coach, PCC with the ICF, and I've been coaching now regularly for about 12 years. And when I think about one moment, it's really hard, but the conglomeration of moments when I've had clients that were like, and we all know people like this that have their specific work self and their specific out of work self, and they're just not in alignment. So you don't really ever feel like you know who those people are. And I've had several clients that were able to kind of marry those two things, which it's almost like freedom. Like they become a new person because they're a fully integrated person. So therefore they're happier. They don't have to work as hard. And surprise, surprise, everybody accepts you, right? It's like that integration there. So those are the things, and those are the specific people that I'm thinking of right now.
That's terrific. And that gives new meaning to bringing your whole self to work. And also thank you for dialing in on Paris time. It's 9 p.m., 9:30.
Yes, it's 9:30. It's normal. It's still light outside.
That's true. Okay. Thank you. Jeff, how about you go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Jeff Orlando. I'm the Vice President of Global Learning and Leadership Development at Medtronic. Medtronic is the world's largest medical device company. For me, I've been a client of coaching, I think 3 times over the course of my career. One was earlier, learning how to be a manager, leader. One was kind of maybe 6-7 years ago. And one was just when I transitioned into this role at Medtronic. And if I think about the experiences that stood out to me, one of the hardest things to do as a leader is leading your peers at work. That's tough stuff, right? You don't have official authority, and sometimes there's a challenging, even competitive dynamic. So that was a struggle for me I had to get through, and I got through it with the help of a coach.
Yes, that is probably one of the most challenging things as you ascend in your career, is that sometimes your buddy now is your direct report, and the dynamic changes. Well, it should change, but it's a struggle. But thank you for sharing that. I want to dive into that a little bit more later on in the discussion. Last but not least, round us out, Caitlin.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I am an organizational psychologist and a program strategy director with Betterworks. I'm going to take my example of coaching all the way back.
Okay.
I was thinking through this, all the way back to my childhood, and with my father, who's not watching this today. He played professional football when I was very little, got hurt and retired, but volunteered as a high school coach and still does today for my whole life. And I think very early on, what was ingrained in me and what I carry forward in a lot of programs and a lot of types of coaching and mentoring programs and performance programs that I work on was the value of, one, making sure you ask questions so the other person understands, but focusing on developing fundamentals versus always focusing on those outcomes. And I think it makes a huge difference to be able to help guide someone in understanding how to improve certain skills, behaviors, knowledge. All that applies in the world of work outside of sports, to make sure that we're doing something better on a smaller scale so that we can improve the outcomes on a bigger scale.
Very, very, very important. Don't go away yet, because you mentioned the word mentoring, and I think that it bears some importance to tease out the difference between coaches and mentors, because there are such things as formal mentors. But let's talk about how those two things differ.
They cross a lot of gray areas too, don't they?
Mhm.
To me, what I see the difference being is a coach is someone that more focuses on performance orientation for the moment, for today. Like, how do we need to get someone to improve in a certain area to improve their performance, especially at work today? A mentor, there's a lot of overlap there, but to me, a mentor is someone that's more future focused to say, what does that look like for the lifetime of your career? Like, not past today, where do you want to take your skill set? Where does your heart lie in the future, and where do you want to grow into? And I think having those distinctions, even though some of that can overlap, is really important as you're looking at what do we need to coach to, and how do we, for lack of a better word, like mentor, provide examples, or give guidance on what that future looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a really important distinction. And TeNita, you had mentioned about getting this seat at the table, and I'm also thinking about that. I mean, she could have easily been a mentor to you as well, isn't that right? So how do you see coaching and mentoring differing?
When I think of mentorship, I think of more partnership. So it's more guiding a person with experience that you have been through. And when it comes to coaching, I look at coaches as far as the answers are already within TeNita. So she coached me at that time because I was doing the job. She wouldn't have put me on that platform if I wasn't ready. So what she had to do was coach me to make me realize she asked the right question. So what are you working on? What are you going to guide them through? X, Y, and Z. So she coached me through the process. But as I feel like when it deals with coaching, you're asking them the right questions because they already have the answers within. Mentor is more so holding their hand, walking them through as far as sharing expertise, more of a partnership together.
Okay. That's an interesting take. Mary, I'm thinking now about this notion of integrating and making a person more whole through coaching. That sounds like well-being to me. The ultimate, actually, well-being when you think about bringing your whole self to work. So let's expand on that topic a little bit and talk to me about well-being.
Sure. The whole topic of this panel thing, and I was looking at the other things throughout the conference today about well-being and coaching being connected, and also this thing about post-pandemic, like what's going on post-pandemic. And I think that
Are we really post? Let's be optimistic.
We're pretending, aren't we? We're pretending.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with that.
And everybody's like, yes, it's over. And then the sniffles.
Mm-hmm.
The pandemic, and what I was saying during the pandemic to people, because of the coaching I was doing, people are not okay. They were not okay. Not okay. So well-being really is up there. And not only up there, Caitlin, you just said about fundamentals. So the other thing that I think that the pandemic uncovered in the workplace is that we need some fundamentals in how we treat one another and how we behave in the workplace and how we create the space that's safe, right? We say that all the time for coaching, create this safe space so that people can develop fundamentals, because you've got people at all levels of organizations who don't have them. They're really good at getting results. There's no doubt. That's how they got to where they are. But these fundamentals that involve humanity, maybe not so much. And that's what we need to do now, including the fundamentals of well-being. So the whole thing around figuring out ways, everyone can figure out their own way to run their own best race, their own marathon. If I was running a marathon with Lydia and I tried to keep up with her, I wouldn't do it. I would drop out of the race, right? So at the same time, if I ran my own race, maybe we could finish at the same time, or at least I could finish, right? And then it's my race. Same thing with well-being. If I'm trying to be this person at home, this person at work, this person with my boss, this person with my direct reports, that's exhausting. It's exhausting. And what we are in a time when everybody's exhausted from work, from seeing faces on Zooms, from whatever, whatever's
Mhm.
going on in our lives. So it's this integration of the whole person
Mhm.
helps you say yes to the things you want, say no to the things you don't, and be okay with it.
Mhm.
Be
And
okay.
the coach's role is to kind of help you figure that out for yourself.
I think the coach's role is to create the space to say it's okay, whatever that is.
Mhm. Okay.
Whatever it is. Like, I don't know what the integration of each person is, but
Mhm.
they know it when they hit on it. And a lot of times it's something that they've never hit on before. They didn't know. So
Mhm.
that whole idea around creating a safe space becomes something that everyone needs to do. That's the same thing with all of the DEI efforts that are happening in
Right.
companies now. Thank goodness, because that's about creating a safe space for
Right,
uncomfortable, weird conversations that people get wrong and awkward
Mhm.
times, but it's
Yeah.
okay because we're getting through and we're getting to a better place. So I think that it's giving permission for people for it to not be okay while we're figuring it out.
Mhm.
And that gets us to that integration.
I'm thinking about permission. Yes, you did. And I'm thinking now about Jill's anecdote and how there is a certain amount of safe space created to allow somebody to voice a goal that may be a real stretch when you just say it out loud for the first time. So, Jill, talk to me about that a little bit, about creating that safe space. You're on mute. There yet? No?
I'm there.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
So creating a safe space for individuals and I was going to start with the idea of in a virtual environment as
Yes.
well. So
Mhm.
sometimes that is a little bit more difficult, but I do think in our world at Intermountain Healthcare, our mentoring and coaching programs are different. And the mentoring program is more for competency development, usually with an individual that has a higher level competency
Mhm.
or skill level in the area that the mentee wants to learn more about. In the coaching environment, it's about helping an individual achieve their own goals and objectives. For example, with the story that I shared with
Mhm.
my client, it wasn't really navigating her career in terms of competencies at Intermountain. It was, I'd like to go to MIT.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it isn't fixing anything from a coaching perspective, but rather, to Mary's point, treating the individual as whole, resourceful, capable, and creative. That's what we say.
Mhm. Mhm.
We believe strongly in that, and we treat all of our clients that way, and asking really what and how questions to be able to help them identify the answers within themselves to move forward. A coach doesn't have to be a subject matter expert to be a good coach on a particular subject if you ask what and how questions and
Mhm.
recognize that the individual that is your client is actually whole, resourceful, capable, and creative. And so by having that mindset, which is really what we call a coach approach mindset, you
Mhm.
do create a safe space because there's no judgment ever passed at all.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
relationship between the client and the coach is completely confidential. The supervisor they're not brought into it. It is simply between the
Very
coach
important. Mhm.
and the client. And that, in addition to the trust level that is created from that mindset of whole, resourceful, capable, and creative, creates a safe space to be able to
Mhm.
discuss many things. One other point, in this particular instance, when she was accepted into MIT, then the new end of the pathway that she needed to take was, when do I tell people? How do I break this to my leader? I'm going to leave the organization. And those sorts of things, she needed to feel comfortable enough to express her concerns, not so that I could fix them, but so that I could help her through really listening to perceive where she was coming from and knowing that she had the answers within her, but asking the appropriate questions to generate her own answers. And when you approach it that way, you create a safe space. There's no judgment passed. You're a tool to help help the client sort through their
Right.
thinking process.
Jeff, when I'm thinking about your personal anecdote, and that would really require a safe space if you are moving into a new position and now your peers are reporting to you. What about that was an opportunity or a challenge in terms of the coaching dynamic there and creating that safe space?
And it was extra challenging for me because it's not as if I moved into a higher position and had new direct reports. We were all at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
So that made it even more challenging. And in that scenario, I ended up working with a coach who was or is a sports psychologist. And for me, the language of athletics, the language of repetition, the language of deliberate practice really gave me a new way to think about a different angle of attack on that issue. And that maybe it made a safer space because we were operating in metaphor and analogy for a while he and I built trust in that coaching relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we kind of built that trust through that adjacent example, I was able to kind of let it fly and process all that out with him. In that scenario, it was also a coach outside of my organization. It wasn't an internal coach. And for me in that instance, I was more forthcoming due to the externality of the relationship versus the internal relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Caitlin, let's talk about creating safe spaces, but doing it remotely, because Jill mentioned that briefly. And I do think that despite the fact that we've had 2+ years staring at screens, pretending we're actually talking to each other, it's still challenging. So what do you see evolving in this next phase of wherever we're at?
I see us learning from mistakes and starting to reinforce, making it a broader agreement to say, okay, we're permanently doing this thing for a lot of organizations. So how do we create repetition and get better at it instead of pretending like it's going to go away? And I think that when we're dealing remotely, it's interesting because a lot of organizations, this was brand new, but for a lot of organizations, this was something that was pretty familiar, especially if you're working on a global level. But I think when we even take what's been in practice for the last few decades, if we're looking at globalization of organizations, it's being able to connect with people in a slightly different way, because when you're not in person, you don't get the inherent body language, the quick walk past, the quick lunch together. You miss a lot of those social cues, which I think is actually, it creates more, democratizes more about how we relate to each other, especially people when we're talking about neurodiversity, because that's inherent in a lot of folks as well. So I think being able to, instead of rely on certain social cues, is making an effort and put that effort forward to connect with people more intentionally and more meaningfully. So it's not necessarily about the quantity of interactions, but how meaningful those conversations are. And I think part of that is really critical. I agree a lot with what Mary says as part of the well-being, is bringing yourself to be yourself, to allow yourself to be vulnerable, open up, and create that environment of trust so that you can start to understand how people are really feeling and how they're doing. And I think that looks a little bit different for different cultures and how we approach, different people's needs differently, but there needs to be a bigger intentionality around making sure those connections are being developed.
But before we can be intentional about our interactions, we have to identify the people who are going to be coached. And I think in a virtual environment, yes, it's on the one hand more equitable, but then on the other hand, I'm thinking about we used to look at high performers as the people that we would raise up through an organization. And now what does high performance look like? Because we're not sitting in the same chair every day. And so proximity bias can come into play here. So TeNita, tell me how you see identifying people and making sure that that process is equitable.
Well, one thing I consider when it comes to the whole virtual environment, I think it allowed us all to be humans. I know I have heard dogs barking in the background. I have 2 French bulldogs. I've seen kids running around. I've seen cats, and it's just like husband and wives on a laptop. Like, it just brought people, when Mary discussed like bring your full self, I had no choice. I won't speak for other people. I'm working from home. Home is authentic TeNita. So with that, it allowed me to say, it's okay if my dogs bark during a meeting. You say, excuse me, you keep going. So to identify those people that, when it comes to like visibility and things, we have to be creative when it comes to visibility. Everyone doesn't want to be on camera. Some people like to show up on camera. There's ways that we can be involved without being in the office, connecting with each other. One thing that I found myself doing when it came to my team is when we had different meetings, we would have check-ins. So to create a safe place, to create well-being, we would just check in versus just jumping into our meeting. How is everyone doing? What's going on? What did you do on the weekend? It also allowed us to become more involved in our different traits and things that we liked, different interests. So it just allowed us to connect on another level. And we have to be very intentional with that, because at the end of the day, we're still at work and we have a job to get done. But I think the virtual environment did allow us to take a step back to allow each other to be human. So now when you're saying who to look for with the different programs to consider being equitable, I work for a global organization. So when we have different trainings and different coaching programs that have different dynamics, we have to consider the people that we're matching. Where are they located in the world? What are their time zones? We also have to look at like cultural. So who are we matching together? Will they be a natural fit? So culturally, will they understand each other's language, demeanors, and different things? So we want to ensure that we're considering all different levels when we're also partnering people. We also want to give people the opportunity to raise their hand if they want to be involved in some programs. I'll speak for the Black community. I know some Black employees felt like they were over-rotated because it's like, hey, you're Black, let's talk on diversity issues. And like, I don't want to take another program. So you have to give people the flexibility to say, hi, I would love to be involved, or I'm going to pass this one out. And just because a person doesn't want to be involved right now, we can't hold that against them. They may not have the bandwidth to take on another project outside of the work that they're doing, being in a pandemic, and the list goes on. But as leaders and managers, there's multiple things that we need to consider when people are raising their hands and different ways people can get involved.
Okay, good points, all. Mary, talk about equitable choosing.
So I think it's about allowing people to raise their hand. At Technicolor, we haven't done any kind of external coaching at scale. Like, it's been really more internally and training in a coach approach. Every training I do, I will include something about holding silence. Hold it. Hold this. Like, ask someone how they're doing. How are you? That's it. It's incredibly difficult to do, but that is the place where someone has a chance to raise their hand and say, you know what I really need is whatever that is that they need. So I think to make things equitable, I think you have to have equal parts, figure out a strategy, and allow people to, poke holes in your strategy, because your strategy might be wrong and it might not be getting to the people who, one, need it, and two, to TeNita's point, want it. Coaching is really successful for people who want it. People who are getting it because, money's being thrown at a problem, it's not as effective. It can still help, but it's not as effective as if someone wants it. And Caitlin, you were talking about that, building the trust. It's anybody can ask someone a question and listen to their answer. And that creates trust. And that's what we can do virtually now more than ever. So I would say the raising of the hand, allowing people to do that, and also really enabling people to take a coach approach, so that that's one of those fundamentals in how we interact with one another in the workplace. I think can really equalize it.
Jeff, same question. What's the most equitable approach?
I mean, maybe it's a controversial opinion, Lydia, but I don't think we have I don't think any organization has an equitable approach to coaching, right? In that, our CFOs would view coaching as a business investment, and that business investment is placed up against our highest yielding assets, right? And
so this is a problem.
And so what we try to do is have a mix of we heard from TeNita and Mary, raise your hand. People know if they need to be coached. We don't necessarily know through our talent processes. We need to find a way to hear from you so we can help, right? That's part of the solution. The other part of the solution is really getting tight with your talent management teams. And all those succession processes, high potential processes, talent mobility processes to figure out who needs or who would benefit most from coaching. But I do think we have a false promise to our organizations if we talk about a fully equitable model when it's a for-profit enterprise.
That makes total sense. But if we're talking about outcomes, I'm also thinking about if you're in a for-profit company, how do you measure the success of a coaching program? Jill?
Thank you. I want to just share a couple of comments on your previous question,
sure.
Lydia. Intermountain has 3 different approaches to coaching. At first, I think that the caregivers or the employees need to understand the difference between coaching and mentoring, because sometimes they don't. It's like, I don't know whether I need a coach or mentor. So we have websites for one for coaching and one for mentoring that explains you need a coach. These are the things that happen. You need a mentor.
If yes, then this.
Yeah. And if you focus on the coaching piece, we have a regular coaching program, and coaching is open to all caregivers at Intermountain, which means we're constantly growing our coach base as well. We also have taken the opportunity over the last year to train inclusive or inclusion coaches, specifically for the DEI purpose. We offer in leadership and org development, inclusion, a class called Inclusive Teams, one called Disrupting Everyday Bias. We actually step our coaches through something called How Do You Be an Inclusive Coach? So that is one thing that I wanted to share to make it a little more equitable across the board to the caregivers. How do we measure outcomes? I think we measure outcomes through a couple of ways. One is, and I think this goes back to some of our engagement surveys, which is the inclusion index that we monitor like there's no other to make sure that people feel like they belong within our organization. And then the second way is the number of people that utilize our coaching program, and also that utilize inclusion coaches as well. So those would be a few ways that Intermountain looks at the metrics of coaching and if it is beneficial to the organization. One other point, we also look at promotional opportunities for individuals. We zero in from a DEI perspective on people of color, different levels of leadership, even down to individuals within the organization. Are we creating opportunities for them to grow and develop? And a coach's, part of the coach's job would be to introduce the client to all the different ways that they are able to develop within our organization.
Caitlin, same question for you, because you're approaching this from somewhat different perspective as an org psych.
Yes, and I'm so sorry. I was so ingrained with Jill's question. Can you remind me for a response? I want to make sure I stay on topic and I don't deviate from it.
No, it's about outcomes. Like what, in your professional opinion, what's a good way to measure outcomes?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. It's a really good question. That's so many variables to that. I think
Mhm.
part of that is a sentiment analysis, or a
Mhm.
sentiment, getting a survey across. Not that people love surveys, but at least a few questions that says, like, what did you get out of this experience with your coach, whomever that might be, and how do you feel that you improved? I think that there's a lot to be said for being able to measure how people felt about something and what their experience was. But the other practical part of that, the more outcome quantifiable part of that, is to say, what's the intent of what I'm supposed to get out of this more than a feel-good relationship? What skill, what knowledge, what area am I trying to improve in? And I think that can really be clearly measured. And I think that coaching focuses a lot on how we do things versus what the output of that is. So if I have a project and I need coaching on improving my negotiation or collaboration soft skills, let's just say, by improving that, am I therefore increasing my next project? Am I increasing the benefits or the outputs of that project? And how would I look at that? So I think part of coach is a coaching relationship, at least within timestamps, is to understand, like, what is the end result we want to get to, so that you have a good trackable path forward, and you can look backwards to be able to measure what that is. So it's going to vary. Everyone's needs are different, but I think that, there would be a very easy way to have both the qualifiable sentiment and the quantifiable output for folks.
We've got a few minutes left, so I kind of want to do a lightning round with all of you. And for the benefit of our attendees who may be pondering how to implement a program like this in the most equitable way possible, how can the organization set reasonable goals to get there, to improve employee well-being and their professional development in the most equitable way possible? How would you break down like 2 or 3 organizational goals that will get you there? It's not, I don't mean it to be a trick question. We've only got 3 minutes, so let's do a speed round. Jeff.
Oh, thanks a lot, Lydia. I would start with peer mentoring, peer-to-peer mentoring. It's a step in the direction of coaching and broader mentoring. There's been some great research that peer-to-peer mentoring builds affiliation, builds engagement, builds a sense of belonging, and it builds that muscle between employees. So I'd start peer-to-peer mentoring program to begin.
Okay. TeNita.
I'm not sure. I'm kind of all over the place with that. I'm trying to think of the first thing. I'll go last because I'm speaking. Sorry.
We don't often have panelists pass, but that's okay. Mary?
So I would say, I would put it out there to everyone and say, this is happening. And here's an application. And that application is a questionnaire about what you think you can get out of coaching. And that does a couple things. It lets you know who really wants it. It also gives you a peek into some aspirations of people. And if you start there, then you're already on your way in building your program. And then you can partner with that person's direct supervisor in order to say, what do you want them to get out of it? So you can tie it to organizational goals and the person's personal goals, and then take the coach offline and have that safe space to work on it.
Great. Well, see that? Reverse engineering goals. Jill?
Yes, I would say a website that defines coaching. That website also needs some kind of an automated scheduling opportunity, so that the workforce can go in and schedule on their own time frames. And the last piece is train your coaches. And sometimes it's expensive to go outside, but you have ICF certified people internally, have those individuals offer programs inside to train more coaches so that they're more accessible to the workforce.
Great. Okay. So use your people, kind of like Jeff, but in a slightly different way. Caitlin. TeNita, I'm coming around, so.
I'll be quick, TeNita. I think role modeling it, showing the value. You're going to have people that will be suspicious of it, that are overwhelmed, that might not be able to opt in right away. I think making it employee focused so that it resonates with people and they see themselves in it, what their value is they can get out of it, even if they need a quarter or a few months to trust what the program is actually doing. But making it more employee focused instead of organization focused, us trying to hit 100% metric or 100% participation as just an example, giving time for people to be able to see their own value.
That's great. Finally, take us home, 30 seconds.
All righty. The first thing what I thought about when it came to the program, understanding the goal. Is it connected to the mission? Is it the organization? So make sure it's a clear goal. Know that people, it's clearly identified. That's one. And then two, second, to see if you wanted to, let's just say they want to increase their knowledge about the organization. Will you match them with people in the same business unit, different levels, or would you match them with people at different levels at different parts of the organization? So do you want to broaden their network? So for myself, I initially thought, okay, how will we structure? So you will want to understand the goal of the program and how you want to structure it going that way.
That's awesome. Great advice. Thank you all. Mary, Jill, Caitlin, TeNita, and Jeff. Thank you so much for spending the time with me. Back over to you, Steve.